Who's gonna talk about RPGs, RPGs, RPGs? Who's gonna talk about RPGs, RPGs? It's the Titterpigs! And now it's time for Titterpigs, the RPG podcast. So am I getting paid for this?
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 3 of Titterpigs. Ta-da! We made it! We and you survived episode 2 and our recent interview with Ian and Alex from Critical Hit Publishing. So first off, thank you for listening to both episode 2 and that interview. Our listens, can't call them views because this is a podcast, so our listen numbers are good, so thank you very much.
Absolutely. You made for everyone who went to drive through and picked up Ian and Alex's game, I hope you enjoyed yourselves over the spookiness of Halloween and know that you made a wonderfully positive impact on both of them to the point where they are coming out with, games quicker. There's another one coming out soon that I've, given a top secret look at. Well, actually,
don't tell everybody.
Well, it was just a premise from like 3 a.m. From Ian, but that counts, right? That counts.
It's top secret.
Well, yeah, no, we've made it through episode 3, and we've done an interview. We've passed I think it's 2 episodes that podcasts usually die in the wild. I think that's what I've been told. If you make it past the second one, you might survive to at least 10.
We're good now, right?
Well, we're good. No, we're golden. We will be monetized, Keith. You and I can retire before we're 55. And live off that sweet Anchor cash.
Great. I'm going to live in a Frigidaire box down on the street corner. Lovely.
But so it's been a while. You've been extremely busy. I myself have also. It's been one of those kind of everyone's anticipating these coming holiday months to be a bit of a bind, whether it be with work, family, both. It's just certain things are getting back to normalcy, and so the abundance of time that we used to have for gaming just isn't around, especially in your particular case. But that doesn't mean that we haven't made some time for it. So what have you been up to, Keith? What's something that what's a highlight that you've done as far as in the world of gaming?
Besides my lack of gaming, which has been ever present lately, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. The big highlight for me since the last time we recorded was this past weekend, Grog Meet-ish 2021. Mm-hmm. That has been my big highlight. I was able to play 3 games at this online convention. Fantastic games with great players, great GMs. I got to play one new to me system, one system, a variation of it I've never played before, and then Call of Cthulhu, a Japanese scenario translated into English and then run in English.
Ooh.
Which is, I believe, to our understanding, we are the first Americans, I shouldn't say Americans, first English-speaking players to actually play this all-Japanese language scenario that has been translated into English.
Well, what were the other 2 that you played? I mean, and how, that's a lot of gaming. So, I mean...
I gamed for 13 hours straight with very little breaks.
Good Lord.
So the first game was Dungeon Crawl Classics, but it was the Lankmar variation. Mm-hmm. I found that to be quite enjoyable. Vanilla Dungeon Crawl Classics just kind of bores me.
Okay.
But I did like this Lankmar variation. I found it intriguing. The decreased number of classes, the connection to the other players, a little bit more intimacy with the setting. I just found it better.
Right.
Even though it was a very short third level story. It was fun.
Yeah, the DCC Lankmar box set and the rule set, they've spent a lot of time and research gathering the information together to give a proper treatment of the Lankmar setting. And
they did a good job, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I haven't played DCC in years.
It does flip the DCC standard thing on its back a little bit, and gives you like you said, it's not as, I mean, I wouldn't call DCC setting vanilla, but vanilla DCC, yes, your standard DCC Gonzo,
right?
And
that's what I mean. I
Yeah.
mean, DCC as a system is good. Mm-hmm. It's just I felt the original game was going from one scenario to the next was very disparate. They were very disconnected. There was no flow. It just didn't connect with me. But that was me.
I'm trying my best to stop all the DCC Rabbit fans sending you emails, but
I know,
whatever. You deal with you've dug your grave.
I've dug my grave. There's piles of dirt up. You guys can send emails, voicemails. Yeah. Anchor.fm/Titterpigs. Hit the record message button and send me voicemails. It's great.
Jen Brinkman, I will send you Keith's private email so you can discuss it with them directly. No, but yeah, Lankmar is fantastic and it's well supported.
It was great. I enjoyed it. I really did. It actually reinvigorated me to play a little more DCC, but I'd like to play more on the Lankmar side of things.
Yeah. And your second one was
the new Twilight 2000 4th edition from Free League.
Why are you playing that trash? Everyone says
hey! You're digging your own grave. Actually, it was quite enjoyable. It's got a lot of things that I personally can connect with. I'm retired military, so I can connect with, like, you and I have talked before. I've talked with some other people that backed the Kickstarter. Now that it's delivering, there's things in this game, because it's modern, there's touchstones, things that we can connect with as people of the modern age, right? The different guns, different weapons, different movies that feature these topics and these tropes and themes. So it's easier for people to connect with, and I can really connect with it. I like it. Mm-hmm. In the group I played with, it was just fantastic. I loved it, and it works really well with the Year Zero engine.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and then my third game was the Call of Cthulhu. The scenario itself was Treason Against the Lord. It's from as I said, a Japanese language Call of Cthulhu book. It's a set of 3 scenarios that have never before been translated into English. Our game master, Tristan, who you and I both know, has translated the first 2 of the 3 into English, and he has run the first 2, and his intention is to translate the third and then run that as well. Oh. I've played just the second. I did not play the first part.
So that begs a question then. You're well versed. You've got a solid Call of Cthulhu and also horror background in games. Is there something in that particular Japanese stylized game that stands out differently from your other standardized Call of Cthulhu adventures that just makes it different aside from just the translation of it?
Yes.
And if you say yes, a lot of tentacles, then I've got the beat button here just in case. So go on.
I want to say yes and no. I mean, stylistically, it's completely different. This is feudal Japan, so right then and there, it turns a lot of things on its head.
Okay.
This is not classic era Call of Cthulhu or modern era anything. This is feudal Japan. So dealing with for me as somebody who has a historical background, because I have oodles of college degrees, but not having a good firm grounding in that time period, I was kind of lost, in the feudal Japan era, but it was fun nonetheless. I mean, I know what the different weapons are. I get the concepts and some of the tropes. It's definitely more subtle.
Right.
The horror rising is more subtle, but there are very big differences.
Okay.
Especially with that time period versus, say, classic era.
Okay.
I would be interested as an American English speaker to play like a Japanese language scenario set in, say, the classic era, the 1920s or 30s. That would be interesting, having a good firm grounding in other classic era scenarios.
Right. Okay.
So,
well, that sounds interesting, and I can almost hear the calls of the masses for anyone who hears this of, I want a copy of that scenario. Because I mean, it's Call of Cthulhu is what? It is the biggest role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game in Japan, right?
Absolutely.
And Call of Cthulhu, with its rabid fan base, always looking for something new, would love to get their hands on some Japanese or other non-English language only scenarios, and that's people love that. And so Tristan, $45 an hour is what you can charge to your time is valuable. So make sure you make sure that you charge accordingly for these scenarios. Well, technically you can't resell them, but anyways, we'll talk after the show.
Right. So did you get the chance to do Grog Meet?
Yes,
I did, obviously.
Well, yes, I did. Interesting story, but we'll get to that in a second. So, but yes, I did run a game for Grog Meetish online, and it's for Liminal. It was another go at my A Curious Case of the Casket Girls. It's Liminal that takes place in New Orleans. It's my effort to bring the Liminal game over to America, and it went off well. The 4 people that I had playing with me were spectacular. It took a definite different turn than the original game that I ran a year ago. The outcome was generally the same, but what took them there was a different story. Let's see. What's a term that I can best describe it as? Let's see. Dumpster fire comes to mind. Shit show.
I was wondering if shit show was gonna arise.
But no, it was fantastic. But it did give me the firm belief that this particular adventure that I've created is without a doubt a 2-parter. It's just in order to get the full enjoyment of it, I would probably want to, if I run it again, it would be 2 parts, 2 3-hour sessions or so.
Nice. Okay.
Well, as with a con game, there's people who are waiting to get to other games, and people, and also those in the UK. It was getting late. It was approaching after midnight, and as
I know.
As riveted as they were, and it's just you're trying to be conscious of that. And so you kind of get to the tail end. You don't want to kick it into high gear too much, and you also just don't want to pull the rug out from underneath them. So there's a lot of balance involved. Yeah, so it went off well. I had a great time. And then after that, it rolled into my ongoing Ash campaign, which I've been playing in for 2 years now, come to find out.
That's fantastic.
And which went well. I've created a new character for the Ash campaign. My lawful good paladin had taken off, so to speak, and is currently missing in action. And so I had the opportunity
Oh, shucks darn.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to create a new character who is, in the aspect of the Ash campaign, a lawful evil necromancer. So I get to flip the coin now. And
oh yeah, you do.
And scratch those evil places. Well, we may edit
Awesome.
that out too, but no, it's so that's it. I mean, I've been in other things. My ongoing Masks campaign is hopefully going to be picking back up again. There's been scheduling issues, but Grog Meetish was wonderful. And at the end of it, there was this wonderful set of videos provided by Pookie to essentially address my my mention of my FOMO in regards to not being there physically with all the wonderful people. But you can check that out on my Twitter if anyone's curious.
So what Scott is saying is, without saying it, is Pookie trolled him, and it was fantastic. So you can go online over to Twitter. Look at Scott's Twitter, and you can see all the videos. They're fantastic. All the folks that attended Grog Meet that Pookie could wrangle into recording like 10-second videos, and he posted them to Twitter and tagged Scott. It was great. Fantastic. He got trolled, and it was beautiful.
Yes. So as mad as I want to be, it's what's that term? It's the thought that counts. So
yes, and it was a wonderful thought. So thank you, Pookie.
Yes.
You made my day. And everybody that was part of those recordings, from all the folks at the Grog Pod and our friends that hang at the Mitchester Arms and everybody involved.
Yes.
Thank you. It was fantastic.
Yes.
So
that was, I guess that kind of in a nutshell describes our weekend.
yeah, it does.
So with that, before we move on to the next segment, just want to take a quick moment and Thank everybody. We've been getting some feedback in. We've been getting some emails. We've been getting some voice messages. We've been getting some sound bites attached to the emails. And so thank you. Please keep this feedback coming. We
love it.
This is the kind of stuff that allows us to come up with certain topics, address certain things regarding our previous episodes. And this is what's going to keep the podcast going is the wonderful feedback that we're getting, whether it be through the emails, through comments on the podcast itself, phone messages. I don't know how you found my private number, but please lose it after you send me a message.
But, I might have something to do with that.
But yeah, so and we're going to touch base on some of those in another segment of the podcast here coming up. So we look forward to that. But yes, keep them coming. No, we may not be able to address them all that we get in a single episode, but we will definitely address them one way or another, whether it be through the podcast itself or through other means, involving the podcast. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that rolls us into our next segment.
Oh, absolutely. So we're going to move from our little introduction here to our main segment, which is a topic near and dear to my heart. We're going to delve into a little bit of product quality, kind of at a high level, but I will probably get up on my soapbox a little bit. It's something I'm passionate about, especially when it comes to editing and physical quality, but I know Scott's a little passionate about it too.
True.
So with that, let's head on over to the next segment. We'll see you there. All right, so we are now into the main segment of episode 3. So we have all gotten role-playing game books. You have, we have, everybody has. So there are certain things that we expect when we get a book. We expect it to be, if we order a hardcover book, we expect it to be a hardcover. We expect certain levels of editing, certain levels of artistic composition, certain quality considerations by the publisher. So why are we talking about this? Well, I recently backed a Kickstarter, as did Scott, and we both got the same book. Scott, why don't you tell us about that version of the book that you got?
Well, the book in question is Flames of Freedom. It was something that we kickstarted a while ago. It comes to us from Daniel Fox, and who's the publisher again? I'm drawing a blank on
Andrew
McMeel.
McMeel.
Okay.
McMeel.
All right. So, anyways, the book arrived, and I started flipping through the book. And as I'm going through it page by page, and I, in fact, started reading into it, I hit a segment of the book where several of the pages, the color tone was off. There's a particular palette in this whole book that is coherent. And several of these pages were just off and muted, not just in color, but in tone, almost as if like a blur had occurred, or not enough ink was injected into this particular page, whatever the case may be. I'm not a printer, but it was off. And I immediately started thinking, well, I mean, does it ruin the usability of the book? Not really, but we all pay good money for these things, especially Kickstarters. Kickstarters tend to be a little bit more expensive than your normal book because you're getting special editions, you're adding on things. So you put forth your hard-earned money and you expect to get what you pay in return. And so I contacted Keith and others to address this. Did anyone else have these issues? And lo and behold, I mean, Keith didn't, but others did.
Exactly. I didn't. I looked at the same pages in my copy of the same book, and all of my pages, same page numbers, had the same semi-gloss finish to them, where his had, because I saw the pictures, right, they were matte finished. They didn't have the semi-gloss ink applied to them.
Right.
Which was very jarring, visually jarring.
It is. It is.
And I've talked to several others myself that have had, and I've seen the visual evidence that have had the same jarring matte finish to those pages, and that's kind of what drove us to start having this conversation about product quality.
Right, because I addressed to Keith.
And expectations.
Exactly. I addressed to Keith. I'm like, am I wrong? I mean, the book itself is still technically usable. There's really nothing, that can't be utilized in these pages that are muted in tone. But still, this is a product that I was expecting to be of a particular quality level. And, so was I wrong in reaching out to them to say, hey, fix this, replace this? And so that began our, the beginning of the said debate. And that's when you kind of go, wait. This sounds like something we can discuss for the podcast. So that's what brings us here is, for lack of a better term, reasonable expectations of the products that we receive when we purchase these books and other things. Right. And everyone has a different level of not just expectations, but of tolerance for mistakes, for things that or things they may not even notice. So with that, then Keith, I mean, what's a jumping off point in regards to this particular topic?
Yeah, I guess I can start that conversation since I do work in the industry as a freelance editor and proofreader. So I guess that's a good segue into this. I mean, when I buy a book, and I think when most people buy a book, I mean, there are some basic expectations. You buy a book, whether it's a print on demand or a offset printed book that comes from a more traditional printing house or publishing house. You physically, the physicality of it, you don't want it to be falling apart when you get it. I've ordered a number of books that were print on demand that like spines are cracking and, the glue base is coming apart, and I mean that's horrible to find when I open the package and the thing is already starting to fall apart and I've never even opened it. I know I've shown you that photographic evidence. That's horrible.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Hence why I have like 5 copies of one book from Drive-Thru-RPG. Okay. But I mean that's just the nature of the print on demand beast. But I think the general public, we can all agree that as you are reading a book, if it is not up to an individual's standards, and everybody's standards do vary, so let's call the elephant out as the elephant in the room is what it is. Everybody has their own personal standards, right? So if you're reading a book and you're going through it, you're going to notice certain technical errors or spelling errors, other grammatical errors, weird layout things, whatever it is. Things are going to jump out at you. Some are going to just, obviously, you're not going to notice them, or I'm going to as somebody that does editing. Right. That's okay, but everybody has their own personal threshold on that. But if the things are so jarring that it makes your reading of a book nearly impossible, or if you're reading like a bit of like, say, fiction prose, right? And it's so jarring that it makes you stop. Right. And have to kind of come out of that immersion to think about what the hell you just read. Then there's a problem. Right. The quality, the writing quality or the editing quality isn't even up to basic standards. Okay. It needs to go back through editing or proofreading. Unfortunately, too many things are being released these days that don't even pass that basic test.
Right. So do you think that's just due to the current climate that we're in? Because, considering what the situation that we're in, we most of us may not be aware, but there's issues with shipping, there's issues with paper, there's issues with just getting things printed. That a lot of the quality might be overlooked just to get these products out before the potential sort of Damocles comes crashing down and nobody can get anything out for a while due to circumstantial issues throughout the world going on. Or do you feel that it's just like it's a case by case situation? Is it? And I don't want to. I'm trying my best not to point fingers.
Right, and I don't want to point fingers, throw shade any particular direction, right? I think a lot of it is this new industry, right? Because the role-playing game industry is not new, so but there's a lot of new players to this industry with the advent and the accessibility of Drive-Thru-RPG and community content programs,
Kickstarter,
and Lulu, self-publishing, Kickstarter, right? People all want to write things and be creative and show other people that they're creative, and that's fantastic, and I love it, and I super support it. Unfortunately, though, a lot of those folks can't afford proper editing,
Right.
can't afford proper layout, art,
Right.
complementary art. So they're grabbing a lot of public domain art, royalty-free art, which is not bad, but it's generally not the best. And I'm not saying you have to have tons and tons of art,
but it stands out. I mean, it's clear in a lot of the products that I have that, you know, whether they've hired an artist or they've gone to the public domain or even
Right.
subscribe to several of these sites where you can, you know, obtain pieces of art to use in your work for publishing reasons. But you know, but
there are, in my opinion, as somebody that does work in the industry, there are three things that make your product stand out above the rest.
Great. What's that?
First and foremost, it's quality art. It doesn't mean you have to have a lot of volume of art, but you have, in my opinion, you need good art.
Okay.
Okay? Quality, not quantity.
Okay.
Okay? Second is a good layout.
Okay.
A quality layout. Where you have a nice flow, it's super readable. You don't have orphans and widows, if you're not familiar with the term. It's where paragraph, you know, you'll have like a paragraph that runs at the end of a column, and then it ends on the next column or the next page where there's like a sentence or a partial sentence. A paragraph starts at the end of a column. You'll have just like a partial sentence, and then it carries on to another page or another column. Orphans and widows, things like that. Those are editing faux pas, layout faux pas. And then the third thing is just quality editing, getting an editor that's somebody that's not the content creator. Okay. I get it. All these things cost money, and unfortunately, you know, that's reality. Things cost money, and a lot of these content creators don't have the money to spend, so they choose to do these things themselves. They choose to do their own layout. They choose to do their own editing, get their partner, spouse, friend to do, can you edit for me? Sure. Right. And they don't have the experience or the technical know-how, or, hey, I'm about ready to release this. Can you proofread it? Sure, I'll proofread it. I've read a bunch of RPG books. Sure, I'll proofread it. But then it becomes very, very evident. But those, in my opinion, those three things make a product stand out, even before we get to physical things.
Okay, so because I was going to address like what I would throw in as maybe the fourth, and I think which would be physical, which would probably be the one thing that a majority of, you know, the public addresses first and foremost. Is my book in good shape? Is it damaged? And is the damage due to the production of the book, or is it due to the transportation of the book? Or, you know, whatever the product may be, and I think that's an easy one usually. You know, hey, I opened up my book and the pages fell out.
That's a print production quality. Problem,
but those are easy ones, I think, and those are the ones that probably a majority of the people, you know, have come up against at one point in time. The other three, the other three, solid, but I dare say that it's not based upon personal predilections, because, I mean, these are solid foundations for the book. People can have a bit of opinion on how these certain things are applied, but if you're missing any one of those three, you don't really have a complete product. I think most people would agree. If
I would like to think most people would agree, but obviously I am not really a content creator. I have created some content, but I am more on the technical side, not the creative side. And I'm not a layout guy.
Right.
So,
but we all have opinions of layout. So speaking of the layout scenario,
I know where this one's going.
So, I mean, and I'm not a, content creator, but I mean, we all have, like I said, opinions, and even some of us may have an artistic or creative background that just because we haven't published something doesn't mean that we don't know what orphans are. We don't know about proper layout. We don't know about, spacing and font and all these things that that really aren't esoteric. They're unifying. Most people, this is a unifying factor that most people would look at and go, ew. But there's certain predilections involved. So a good example, as far as layout is concerned, is a while back, Chaosium came out with
I knew this was
a
coming up.
preview of the up-and-coming Pendragon.
Pendragon 6th
Yes,
edition.
and
Quick start.
it's a quick start, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of the quick starts that do come out are almost of an unfinished quality, I would say sometimes. They tend to be copy and pasted. They tend to be rushed out to get there during a particular con or free RPG day. So certain they tend to come out maybe a little loosey goosey and a little lenient, and people tend to be more forgiving. But so in the preview of the Pendragon, as you know, but others may not, is they are utilizing a illuminated manuscript style. And once again, for those who aren't familiar, Keith, this is where there's the artwork is presented around the perimeter of the margins of the page. Is that the best way to describe it, or do you have a better way?
Yeah, it's a border type artwork style.
Right. Similar to how you would see in the old books, how monks would be creating, a lot of the books as they were transcribing, making copies of the Bible or histories or things like that. And it's a beautiful format, but is it conducive to good reading? Is it conducive to good layout? And one of the things that was highlighted in this layout is the spacing of the paragraphs within the borders of this illuminated script, and how they were butting up against the artwork, making it, I don't know if it was difficult to read, but it just unsettling, I guess, or or what was. Do you want me to mention his name, or just leave him anonymous at this point in time? So, but our communal friend, I guess. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our communal friend does layout for a living for a magazine, and he mentioned because he's a fan of Pendragon, as am I. And as is Scott, and we were all looking at the new 6th edition Quick Start when it first came out, because it came out in PDF, and we're all like, woo, all excited. And the illuminated manuscript style, which I'm going to go on record saying, I like it. Damn you all, I like it. But that's the European historian in me. But there are points in it where there are some vines in the, because it's kind of this entwined vine border that do creep very, very close to the text blocks of the copy, of the paragraphs that our mutual friend highlighted and commented on that really was jarring to him as a professional that does layout. Graphic artist that does layout.
And I think his point is that, no, this wasn't a mistake, because as obvious as it was, there's no missing it. So his opinion was this was a conscious decision.
It was a design decision.
Exactly.
There was no mistaking that. Regardless, I still
true, but I mean, I
don't have any heartburn about
let's put it this way: if I was there and I was looking at this, the one thing I would do would just shrink that text box down just a tad, so just not touching it. I mean, it can be done,
but to be fair, we don't know what the final version of the Pendragon 6th edition Quick Start box set's going to look like in terms of the actual layout of the real books. The 6th edition hardcover books, when they do the relayout, re-release of, what is it? The Great Pendragon campaign. We don't know what that's going to look like. In terms of if they're going to keep the illuminated manuscript thing, that may have only been in that one particular product. They may have gotten feedback similar to what we're discussing and redesigned, retooled it.
As stated, it is a quick start, and you have opinions on a lot of these quick starts or free RPG day things that fall under the same category.
Yeah,
were these mistakes overlooked? Were they a conscious decision to just let it go as is? And things such as that. And when I say mistakes, what I'm discussing with you is obvious mistakes. So did you want to touch on that, or do you want to move on to another?
I don't want to touch on it too much because it relates to a review that I've got coming up on Rolling Boxcars for a specific 2021 Free RPG Day product. that I don't want to give away because it was part of a Patreon poll for my blog. So I don't.
Yes.
It's a teaser,
yes,
everybody. Go read Rolling Boxcars. It'll be out there in December.
Okay.
But we can move over to a different product.
Okay.
Quality concern.
So with the illuminated script, that is not just a layout decision, but that's an artistic decision, I think. Both. I mean, both yes. because of the aspects of it being, taking up the scope of the margin, but also because of the artwork involved in it. So art then. Okay, so this might be a little different than things that are more tangible. So you had stated choices of art. Is this legitimate art that they've hired people to provide for the book? Does the art itself portray the information that's in there? The choice of art, and then falling into the whole layout of it. I guess, do you have an example of like a yes or no, or something where you would just, in regards to the artistic aspect that either would be so jarring to you that you would either second guess a purchase or feel like this is not what I've wanted and I might just want to return this thing? And without saying the book, just, if you're able to give like a...
I can collectively say there was one recent Kickstarter that I had the misfortune of putting eyes on, both in terms of art, layout, all three of those touchstones, those hallmarks that I had said that I think make a good product. Decent art, again, quality, not quantity, layout, for readability and things like that, and proper, decent editing. Those three touchstones, this particular thing missed the mark on every one of those. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna give it a name. I have to. It's a book called Leviathan Rising, and it is absolutely shit. I was only able to see the PDF of it to give you context, to give listeners context to all 3 points on that. Okay, first to address the art. The art just didn't. Some of the art met and matched with the context of the book, right? The themes going on in the book. And there wasn't a ton of art, right? So there wasn't huge quantities, but it was mediocre in terms of quality. Okay, that's fine. This individual didn't spend a lot of money on art. Okay, but he didn't spend a lot of money on anything apparently. So art was just kind of meh, but I could deal with the art. Right. It was acceptable in Keith's personal acceptance level. It was okay. As far as everything else, it was so subpar. If I had the physical book, I would have demanded an absolute refund, and then I would have burned the book. The editing was piss poor. When I skimmed through the PDF, just trying to read paragraphs, punctuation missing, sentences duplicated, tenses were, this thing would jump from active voice to passive voice. Okay. It was absolutely horrible. And then the layout was a joke. The PDF had, and I know somebody who had the physical book, so I can make this comparison. So the PDF had a table of contents that listed page numbers, and the PDF has, when you look at an Adobe PDF, it has page numbers. You can jump page to page to page, right? But the pages themselves don't have page numbers annotated on them, on the PDF itself, right? So I asked somebody who had the physical book, and they said, nope, there's no page numbers on the physical book. Yeah, it's definitely like a WTF moment. Like, there's a table of contents that says, hey, this chapter or this section starts on page X. Where is page X? There's no bloody page numbers. And then because it is an OGL product, or it uses it functions with the OGL, right? It makes use of some of the OGL. So you look at the OGL license in the back.
Oh, no.
That was hilarious. It took the OGL and literally copied and pasted it in, and there was still like the bracketed text that says replace with your stuff here and that kind of stuff. This thing was so rushed, and rushed is it's absolutely hilarious because apparently this thing was so late in getting to Kickstarter backers that I don't know how this could be rushed. I mean, this guy delivered, but I mean, I feel like personally, everybody that purchased it, through Kickstarter, got ripped off. So all three of those things that I think are the three legs of what I personally think are the basis of a good product before we even get to the point of printing, because you can have a digital product or a print product, right? The three things that make a good product, he barely met the mark on one of them and completely missed the mark on the other two. And if you don't have three legs on a tripod, you're not standing up.
That's what you would consider. Oh, no.
Sorry if I got off on a
tangent.
No,
and it should, because really I think that falls outside of the realm of reasonable expectations. That would stand up as the ultimate example of absolutely not. Here's your product back. Either fix it to make it, to somewhat acceptable, or give me my money back. And there's no in between.
And I'm aware of several Kickstarter backers that demanded their money back after getting
the physical book,
the physical book, and they were refunded their money. So he did honor the publisher, creator did honor that request, and through Kickstarter did refund their money. I know of two individuals. I believe there were probably more. So there's that, but
so there's that, but still, you would much rather still have that money in the bank than go through the whole process of this whole situation and then having to deal with the work and stress and effort of having to go through it, because it's not. I mean, something like that is blatant, but certain things, depending on people's predilections, are. Like I asked you the question, am I asking for too much? Should I just accept what I have and just move on, or should I, ask for something that should reflect the completed project as a whole? I mean, it wasn't like, in my example, it wasn't like half the book was muted. There were several pages, but still, it's not complete. Whereas your example was just something maybe someone shouldn't have done to begin with.
Your thing with Flames of Freedom is a print production
quality control,
correct, like quality assurance issue, because a friend of mine, another listener of the podcast who happens to live locally here with me, her book is the same way on, I think, very similarly paid number of pages to yours as well. So that tells me there was a batch that went through the physical print process that had the same production quality errors before it got bound.
So it looks like we have a good example of, totally unacceptable. And we've got three to four points of what people shouldn't feel guilty about addressing in these completed projects, that they meet a certain expectation. But with that, as we all know, we're human, and mistakes can occur both on the human level or on the mechanical level. And sometimes these mistakes should be tolerated, I guess, to a certain degree. So with that, then, we keep saying reasonable expectations. We're not expecting perfection, but what are some things that you feel that, don't really hit the points that you've mentioned, but are still not deal breakers, or you feel, well, I can carry on with this and just use it as is? I mean, and a quick couple examples that I would have would be things that I probably wouldn't see that you would be a lot of the editing mistakes, right? Punctuation, grammatical errors, things that that depending on the level of the person who is reading it as they're going through the book, will either look at it and go, oh, okay, or not even see it. It'll just pass them by. Or another example is in regards to the artwork, personal preferences. I mean, an example real quick is just my copy of Rackham Vale, which is an RPG setting book designed upon the world of Arthur Rackham and his artistic paintings from yore. But the book arrives in a black and white format. My idea of someone who's presenting a world based upon someone's artistic endeavors, even though they did provide the artwork, but this man used the color as a medium. So in order to really appreciate the world that this man created with his artwork, it should be in color. Why it was due to monetary restraints, apparently, is the word that I got back. But then, so I looked at it and go, well, it's not ruined. The presentation is still generally good. I just wish they made the decision of color.
Right. It didn't meet
exactly.
your personal expectations.
And it didn't warrant me going, I mean, to have an opinion, but not go, hey, this is crap. I want my money back because I deserve to have full color artwork. So reasonable expectations that if they're not meant, that you would be okay with just going, well, maybe, and I know of another example, but I want you to kind of touch on this first. So
personally, if I'm reading a book, as I said earlier, if I'm okay with some very basic grammatical errors.
Right.
I mean, let's face it, we are all human. I have been part of editing teams. I've been the second proofreader after it's been through 2 editors, another proofreader, and I'm the last proofreader, and errors still got through. So it happens, okay? Because things get introduced in final layouts, whatever, people tweak things happen. Okay, it's cool. Things are going to happen. So as long as they're not so egregious and jarring to your reading experience to where it makes you, as I alluded to earlier and said earlier, if it causes you to have to step back and go, what the hell did I just read? That's a problem. But if it's like, that really should have a comma? No, I'm not. Okay, fine. Now, if it's that way through the entire book and you're noticing those things perpetually as you read, your level, everybody, yours, mine, every listener's going to have a different threshold of, is that acceptable to each individual person? If I'm reading fiction, because some of these role-playing game books have bits of lengthy fiction in them. And if I'm going through it and there's jarring bits that take me out of the immersion of that fiction because it's like an editing artifact that causes the sentence flow to stop. It's 2 sentences where they didn't know that they wanted, there's this one and then a replacement sentence, and they didn't know which one they wanted to keep through the editing process. When those things happen and they don't get cleaned up and taken out, they're called artifacts. And that makes the reading process a bad experience. If that happens once, okay. But if I tend to see that over and over again, that tells me the person that's editing it or proofreading it is inexperienced or they did it free, gratis. Personally, I'm willing to accept some of that, depending on who the publisher is. If it's a little indie publisher, I'm willing to accept it a little bit more because I want to be supportive of new publishers and new creators. But the more and more I see it throughout the product, the less and less patient I get with it. When it comes to layout, I'm not a technical guy when it comes to art and layout. I'm not colorblind or anything like that, but I can't tell you good layout from bad layout until I see it. So I can pick out widows and orphans because those things tend to stand out. I tend to glance over them a lot of times, unless I'm specifically looking for them.
Specifically, like take for example Mork Borg. It's an artistic layout. Every page is different. Everything is going to be. Is that something that you adhere to, or I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that, but are you more of like just I like the traditional layout or the atypical layout?
I don't have a particular preference. I mean, I like that art punk style because that's what Mork Borg kind of calls itself, as art punk. I like it. It's cool. But I also like the 6th edition Pendragon with its illuminated manuscript damn near touching the copy. So, and then I like lots of various things. There are things that I specifically don't like. Like I don't like watermarks. I do not like watermarks behind my copy. That is visually, that is distracting to me. So there are things that Keith doesn't particularly like. I wouldn't necessarily ask for a refund on something like that. But if it was so distracting, like the watermark was so bold with the text over it that makes it nigh impossible to read, I would.
And I've seen a lot of that. Sure. A lot of that in some of the older books. Some of the Oh yeah, newer books.
I've seen it in some
but
newer
the
books.
'90s, a lot of the page formatting in the '90s were just and a lot of artistic designs, but readability. Some of them are just go beyond the pale.
Yeah, as far as layout and art for me, as long as it's still readable, I am personally willing to overlook a lot of things. When it comes to readability, as far as editing, I'm willing to overlook some stuff. If I have to scratch my head and go, what the did I just read? One time, two times, through as I'm reading a section, I'm okay with generally. But if I have to keep doing it more than that, I'm going to get less and less accepting of it. And if I find that there's technical issues with the mechanics or rules, like where this rule mechanically contradicts this rule because of bad editing.
So do you consider in that aspect, the rule situation? We're all aware of several companies who come out with errata after the fact, especially sometimes after even the print. That warrants a lot of second printings. Okay.
I'm used to errata because I'm also a tabletop war gamer, like Hex Encounter war games, and errata files, like a little PDFs of errata, are normal.
But yes, true. I mean, and there's certain people in the industry who have kind of become the poster child for that, Artel Sorian. But here's our finished product. Here's at least 2 to 3 pages of errata after the fact, and then of course, a year or so later, here's the second printing with the errata in there. But certain people tend to fall into it's almost like getting a patch. You get the new video game, and that the same day there's a patch to fix all the bugs. I mean, and I've seen that in a lot of the Kickstarters.
Yeah. When you look at a lot of errata, a lot of it's for clarity reasons. This example should reference this, or this page number should reference that. But when it comes to mechanical things, for example, I'm not going to mention the product because it hasn't been released yet. And it was a contract project I just worked on. I was proofing it, so these things should be fixed. But I was going through it, and as part of my job was to look at some of the technical aspects. So I am looking at stat blocks for this particular product, and I was having to do all of the hit point calculations. I didn't know if they were right or not. And then when I did the hit point calculations per the game book, I'm not going to mention what game it's for, some of them were correct, some of them were wrong, and some of them were egregiously wrong. One was off by like 40 or 50 hit points, which makes a big difference. It was 40 or 50 hit points too high. One was like 20 hit points too low. So those are mechanical and technical issues. One had experience level that was several levels off. I mean, those aren't game changers or game breakers, but as a game master, if I'm just supposed to grab this stat block and drop it into my game and go and run with it, the expectation is the creator did it right. The editor or whoever's listed as editors and proofreaders check these things, and everything is right. And I'm able to, as a game master, I'm able to just grab it and go. I think that is a general consumer expectation. I think that sums it up, whether it's for D&D, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, Morkborg, Liminal, any indie game, any game out there, doesn't matter. Hero Quest, Twilight 2000,
even
Vazen, it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever it is. I mean, the expectation is if you're going to put it out there, grammatical stuff aside, okay, because English proofreaders, like UK proofreaders, do it differently because they look at things differently than American proofreaders, than Spanish language proofreaders. And so we all have like different schools of things that we look at, right? But when it comes to like the technical bits, you got to get that shit right, man. You got to. That is absolutely, you got to be spot on with that stuff. Examples, okay, cool. You're referencing a wrong page, fine, whatever. Fix that in an errata file, or clarify that example, or that's supposed to be that that spell's supposed to get, or that magic weapon's supposed to be a +2, not a +1. Okay. Probably should have been fixed and caught, but when it comes down to the nitty-gritty mechanical bits, the things that actually make the game work and function,
Right.
hardcore rules, those need to be in line, lock, stock,
Otherwise,
and barrel
expect
from the word
people
go.
to come at you or come towards you and say, hey, this product's unfinished, and potentially either want a refund or want to exchange it, or demand you make these particular changes because you should.
Yeah. Because if I tell you this shit's half-baked and put the damn thing back in the oven and finish cooking it...
You should know better.
There's a reason.
Because there's plenty of examples out there.
Yeah.
There's plenty of things that people can look at to get a clear idea of how things work or what doesn't. So, well...
Yeah.
No.
Okay, I'm going to get off.
This is fine. This has been Inside Baseball with Keith. Welcome to the Keith Show. No, this is fine. This particular subject I knew was going to be a little bit one-sided just because of your experience, your professionalism with that, and just being in the muck and the mire of it all. Go ahead.
All right, but I have one last question for you. Mm-hmm. What is your preference? Print on demand or offset printed?
I prefer the offset printing. And this
Why?
may have no bearing whatsoever. It just to me, it feels like there's a better physical quality to the book, even though there may not be. I could be completely off on that. It could be something that I've just concocted in my mind. But to me, the offset printing seems to be of a better quality. I have less anticipation of the fact is, if I open this book, are the pages going to remain in there the more I use it? Am I able to, when I open the book, there's going to be a better chance of it laying flat and being usable. Whereas print on demand, I don't know, it almost seems like several of the print on demands that I would get from drive-through, hardback, softback, very widely in their quality.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not the only one. I'm sure
I could order
have
the exact
experienced it
same
too.
book from drive-through or Lulu for that matter, and set them down side by side, and they have wildly different aesthetics to them, as opposed, where the print quality is the image, offset a little bit. The pages, was this. Is this the quality of the glue when it was everything held together or when it was stitched or whatever? The same exact book. Boom. Just what happened here? Why is this cover slightly to the right? But
okay.
I that's how I feel. But that is an exception, not the rule, as many people who have recently received their 40th edition Call of Cthulhu book can attest to. But yes. So does that answer your question? I'm not wrong, and just
it does.
It just feels better.
No, it feels better. It does. I'm a fan of. I'm personally a fan of offset printed books. So because they are one-off printed books. Each book is printed. The sections are printed, and then they're stitched together, and then the case wrap covers put on, that type of stuff. It has a process where print on demand books are literally high speed printed, like a giant photocopier is basically what it comes out of a print file, obviously, but it's basically like a high speed photocopier. And then they're bound, they're put together, they're glued, they're cut, that's.
But then that falls into the whole realm of reasonable expectations. I paid $12 for this POD of a
$12
of a game that doesn't exist.
Yeah,
exactly.
Or $50.
But I would rather than there be print on demand options for all those particular reasons instead of just having the offset printing only.
Oh, absolutely! It gives us access to a wider array of materials that we would not normally otherwise have.
And because of the savings that we get in that, there's certain things that if the page is slightly to the left a little bit, I will forgive that more than the $150 Kickstarter that I received, and the pages are muted. You should know better.
Yes, agreed.
But so I think we've talked long into this, and I think we've covered a lot of good points. We've addressed a bit of the expectations that you and I both have when it comes to product quality. But what do our listeners think? What are your
Right.
expectations? What are some in regards to when you receive your product? What are some tolerable levels of expectations you have? What are some things that you don't mind, or even what are some things that you never even really thought of before that you completely overlook, or some things we didn't mention?
Yeah, Scott, I think you're right. I think it's a good time to move over to the Your Side of the Mic segment.
Player agency and horror. Ha! Tell me, have you seen the others?
Tango, India, Tango, Echo, Romeo, Papa, India, Golf, Sierra.
It's time for Your Side of the Mic. Last episode, we asked your opinion about player agency in horror games, and we received some responses. And we'd like to share just a few of those with you.
First up, we have Graham, who sent us a voicemail providing his perspective about horror at the gaming table.
Hi Scott. Hello Keith. Thanks for episode 2. Interesting stuff. Great podcast. Some of my favourite horror scenarios are where the characters retain their agency, but what the story builds to is being faced with a terrible choice. Do you do a bad thing for a good reason? How much are you prepared to sacrifice to prevent something terrible from happening? I use these sorts of questions, often in generic systems, to invoke horror. So a player who has to disfigure their character to enact an ancient ritual usually thinks twice before taking that knife to their own face. If you have to cut off your own eyelids to see the truth, perhaps you really don't want to see it. I'll give you a great example at the heart of the Fairyland scenario by Scott Dorward. I ran that using Cthulhu Dark. Spoilers ahead. The daughter of a player character is replaced by a duplicate, as have other children in the village, and the new child is both terrifying and coldly vulnerable. The villagers, afraid of the violence the child can inflict, suggest that they must care for the new child and guide them towards good. And in the epilogue, the child never ages and slowly, in its own terms, bonds with the parent. Years later, the parent, on their deathbed, feels life slipping away as this child watches with that same calm curiosity it's looked at everything for the past 4 decades. But in our final scene, we see the place where this all started, Hobbs Wood, with its fairy circle, and below, the cave beneath it, where amongst the rock there stands liquid-filled cylinders dimly illuminated with green and blue energy.
And creatures of shadow observe with compound eyes glittering. They too have that calm curiosity. And we move to a cylinder that has stood here for 40 years, and inside it floats the brain of an 8-year-old girl. Here, where you left her, in the dark. She still screams.
After some rather lengthy negotiations, Scott's wife, Julie, has been contracted to narrate a listener's email.
Hi, Julie here. Scott asked if I would read a summary of an email response from Jim McCarthy, and so here goes. Jim writes, "Thanks, guys. A good solid number 2. Great work, and this discussion that often comes up in the games I run, mainly investigative games, so that's what I focused on in my response. How much player agency is right for a horror investigative RPG? I think the parameters you have to take into consideration include, but are not limited to the below. The style of game. Investigation RPGs require a certain amount of railroading, hence games like Trail of Cthulhu has drives to explain why you signed up for this in the first place. You had no choice. This is what you were born to do. That said, even investigative games can be designed to give the appearance of choice, whereas non-investigation RPGs You would expect more freedom to develop characters, to forge your own path, etc. B. The setting expectation. Call of Cthulhu literally says on the tin, you are going to die. The odds are never in your favor. These are alien gods you are up against, chewing their way through solar systems and changing the fabric of the universe. The most you can hope for is to live out your days in peace, oblivious to the creeping, slimy, mind-blasting denizens at the edge of your knowledge. Assuming you've read the blurb, you've signed up for everything that happens to you. C. The players. Know your players. Are you at a horror RPG con or a D&D con? Are you running for the home group that you've played with since school or some random folks from the inner blurb? Do your players love the knuckle-clenching roller coaster ride of a good horror movie? Are they even fans of the genre? You could be in for a tough time, as investigative games can be hard to be spontaneous with, but there are ways around this. So in summary, really great discussion. I'd love to hear back from others on how they address this, because it does feel hard to do. A, run investigative horror campaigns, and B, balance player agency with exposing the mystery and not overwhelming the GM with prep. And Jim closes with, oh, and if you've played the D-Sanction, please tell me what to do when one of your players is a lecturer in history and you wondered if you just invented the Postal Service 100 years too early. Cue snorts of derision. All the best, Jim. And I have no idea what I just read.
And finally, we have Ludovic, who sent us a 10-minute audio file. Due to time constraints, we are presenting an abridged version in which we focus on his perspective regarding the use of mechanics in horror games.
First, great job recommending games that are out of the beaten path, so to speak. That was nice. The fact that half the games you recommended are games that don't have any so-called horror mechanics that you talk about is a kind of a giveaway, in my opinion, that first, you don't need mechanics for everything. You can have a horror or investigation or a conspiracy or a comedy game without specific mechanics for these things, because they are less a type of a game for me as they are a collection of tropes or a style of storytelling or play that you can put on top of something. Is there a difference between a horror game and a game with horror-themed adventures? My guess is there isn't much of a difference, and it sounds like you might be on the same page, but frankly, who cares? As long as players are scared of opening the cellar door, or as long as the player are shocked by some corruption of the mind or body or overtaking somebody, as long as the players are frightened or stressed or horrified, it's a horror game to me. And you do not need mechanics to manifest an emotional response. You can do that purely by storytelling. I mean, that's what books have done for like ever. Now, sure, special game mechanics might help, or they might not. They might get in the way, so who knows? Who cares? Now, if we look at some specific game with those so-called horror mechanics, the two that I know best are, of course, Call of Cthulhu and Alien RPG. For Call of Cthulhu, the 7th edition will actually say this about Bouts of Madness. It is up to the keeper whether this control takes the form of dictating specific action or if it means giving the player guidelines on how to play out the madness for however long it may last. And the rules suggest either rolling on the madness or phobia table or choosing something appropriate. The Alien RPG is more prescriptive about this, though the GM is supposed to roll on the tables and apply the result. But I think the stress mechanic is super cool first and super well adapted to the tropes of that specific franchise, that it works well, mostly because unlike Call of Cthulhu's sanity mechanics, first Alien stress mechanics have a positive side, because adrenaline boosts your ability and gives you extra die, until you crash, that is. So it's kind of a push your luck kind of game, I guess. Also, you can actually counteract this and recover your agency pretty quick compared to Call of Cthulhu, because it only takes somebody, for example, succeeding a command roll to snap you out of it, so you can manage it if only as a group. So thank you, happy Halloween, and don't read that book out loud, you don't know where it's been.
All right, so today we talked about product quality expectations with our new books. What are your expectations? What do you find acceptable and unacceptable? Call in, leave us a message, and tell us what you think. All right, listeners, thank you for listening to episode 3. We appreciate your patience with me being up on my soapbox for this episode, and Scott's patience for letting me be up on the soapbox. Hey, put that hammer down. You are not destroying my soapbox or me. But seriously, thank you. We appreciate you listening, and hopefully you've learned a few things. That was kind of the purpose of this.
Mm-hmm. And as for our next episode coming up, grab yourself your favorite warm scarf, a hot cup of peppermint-flavored coffee, because next month, as we all know, is the reason for the season. So look for that, and also some special stocking stuffers to boot. Take care, everyone.
Till then, happy gaming.
Happy gaming.
Tell me, have you seen the Yellowstone?